Hello and welcome to GreenFleet Talks. My name is Kate Armitage and I'm hosting the discussion today. I'm delighted to welcome back Darren Gardner, who is Western Europe Performance Lead at Keba. Hi, Darren.
Hi, Kate. Good to be back.
Really good to speak to you. Thank you for joining. Today, Darren, we're kind of zooming in on the world of vans, an area that I know you have a lot of expertise in. So let's start at the very beginning. We've seen this kind of massive uptake of battery electric passenger cars, but the van market has been slightly slower to grow. In your view, why is that so, and why has it been harder to electrify the commercial fleet?
Yeah, sure. I mean, simply, it's just a little bit more complicated than passenger cars for everyday normal personal use. You know, when you drive an electric car at home, you're interested in what type of car shall I buy? Will it get me on my caravan holiday once a year and a trip to Tesco down the road? And can I charge at home or at work? You know, it's a little bit easier. I've oversimplified, obviously, but when you are electrifying commercial vehicles, it's just very, very different and frankly a bit more complex. So if you take, for example, a common problem or concern that drivers will have, whether you're driving your personal car or a van, is range. But the weight of commercial vehicles is a really key factor. So if you've got a payload, an average light commercial vehicle, an electric van, if you take the Ford e-Transit, for example, it's got a 68 kilowatt hour battery, and that will give you a 200-mile range. But if you're looking at, say, the Mercedes e-Actros 300, the electric truck, to get the same range, you're going to need a 300 kilowatt hour battery, and so that alone is a lot heavier. So these are some of the factors that, you know, kind of fleet managers and energy managers need to factor into, is the kind of the weight and the range and how that kind of all works together. Whereas charging your car at home just to go to Tesco's or on holiday twice a year, it's a little bit easier. So in simple terms, it's just a lot more complex. And then there's the kind of the total cost of ownership. It's quite straightforward in the passenger car market. The prices are coming down. Cost parity is much cheaper to charge at home and those sorts of things. So, but when you're buying an electric van or an electric truck, the costs of those can be sort of between, well, probably about 50%, 60% higher than the equivalent diesel truck. So on the face value, it's, you know, if you're a fleet manager or a finance director, it's just really expensive. Why would you do that? But then when you look at the cost of electricity, particularly if you're charging at a depot, and especially if you're charging at those off-peak hours, then those fuel prices can be as low, you know, a discount saving of 60 to 80% on a sort of pence per mile basis compared to diesel. And then from a maintenance point of view, much easier to maintain electric vans. So there's some savings to be had on the maintenance that affects that total cost of ownership. All of that needs calculating and working out. And if you're a really sort of a high mileage fleet, then that kind of makes sense. But then if you're not, then, you know, often diesel, unfortunately, can probably, or petrol can still come out slightly ahead. So you've got to kind of work all of that out, and that just takes time and it's more complex. And that's before you've even got into reimbursement of expenses. For example, if you operate a fleet that returns to home rather than to the depot to charge, how do you reimburse your expenses? What does that then mean for benefit in kind and other HMRC rules? So, you know, long and short of it is, it's all complex and difficult and different to cars and personal use. But it's absolutely doable, and we see that with fleets across the UK. You know, Royal Mail Amazon, UPS. All of the big fleets are all electrifying. So I think, you do the low hanging fruit first, and then the harder stuff comes after that. So I think we're in that phase now.
There's some. You touched on it at the beginning, but the complexity. Vans typically don't have as good a range as some of the best passenger vehicles that are on the market at the moment, and of course that range comes down when you add in that payload, which is really common in a lot of utility vans, for example. So I think that's a challenge, and of course if you are struggling with range, great, there's the public charging network, which is good. But that's more time that's got to be built into the day. And there are other challenges with the public charging network if you're a van, aren't there?
Yeah, there are. Yeah, I mean, most of that is that most of the kind of the public charging networks are designed for cars, and not for those sort of longer wheelbase vans, and certainly not if you're a HGV. So space is essentially is probably like one of the main problems in terms of the public infrastructure. And then the obviously not if you use one of our DC chargers, but one of the other issues that can be is about charger power and downtime of those charging points. So we often see poorly maintained networks, and that could be just down to the charge point operator not being on top of firmware updates, or it could be a whole host of reasons, usually the internet as well. But often what you see is that those charging assets are slower than advertised, or they're not working at all, which is frustrating if you're traveling as a personal use on holiday or going to Tesco. But if you're delivering parcels and you're on a schedule, then that's really critical. So
it's catastrophic almost, isn't it? Because there's everything is so carefully scheduled in to the minute. And if an allowance has been made for recharging and that time goes over, or worse, the driver's got to go to another location to charge.
That's right. But I think what we're beginning to see, though, and I think in terms of the sort of the green shoots are these sort of fleet charging hubs, specific charging hubs, where they're specifically designed for commercial vans, for HGV trucks, and in terms of the space, in terms of the facilities, those sorts of things, and I think it's up in Nissan. They've got a facility there that can handle sort of 60 electric trucks. We know that GridServe are rolling out their, I think they call it the electric freightway network, which is a whole bunch of high-powered hubs for commercial vehicles. And then we're seeing sort of again sort of multi-fuel or multi-alternative fuel charging stations being built in the UK that include hydrogen and biomethane, for example. So I think there's a couple up in sort of Sheffield and Warrington way. So
there's definitely more options coming online.
Yeah, and I think what I see, kind of as a driver and a professional in the industry, is that when you go to your standard public charging networks, you kind of see the DPD vans and such taking the bays, which is fair enough. So they're charging there, but that means that other people can't use those. It's a bit hit and miss for everybody in terms of whether that charging network will even work, and that makes it difficult if you're a fleet manager to plan those routes and the downtime for those drivers. So I think the advent and the eventual evolution of specific fleet charging hubs, I think, will solve that particular issue.
Some of those problems. But I mean, you talked about high powered charging. if we kind of take it back to the basics, though, which is the majority of fleets, whether that is van or truck, are still favouring the depot charging infrastructure wherever it's possible, and that's unlikely to be these high-powered chargers, isn't it?
It is, yes. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's back to sort of the first question in our discussion about, you know, why is it complex, is the first thing you've got to work out is the profile of your fleet and where you are going to charge. So a bit like kind of home charging, you know, you're going to charge at home most of the time, but occasionally you're going to need to use public infrastructure, and that's probably, well, it is the same for many fleets in UK and Europe, is that the equivalent of the home is the depot. It's often the cheapest and easiest place to charge your fleet. And they'll still need to use the public infrastructure, but yeah, certainly it's cheaper and more reliable.
And if the vehicles are able to charge overnight, of course, it's much more likely to be AC charging, which is cheaper to install, and you get the benefit of the off-peak rates as well, potentially.
That's right.
And you touched on TCO, Darren. So kind of my final question is, Keba, I know, is very active in the vehicle to grid space, and indeed load balancing. So all these great things that can help fleet operators save money. Tell me a little bit more about that, and where and why should fleets be looking at this?
Yeah, I suppose the load balancing, the vehicle to grid, is wrapped up in a bigger topic called future proofing. So when you're investing in electric vehicle infrastructure at your depot, for example, you want to build some infrastructure that's not just fit for purpose for year one, but also for year 5, year 6, and that should include, in my opinion, ISO 15118. That's the gateway. That's a communication protocol, both in the hardware of the chargers, but also in the software, that enables 2 or 3 really great things, which is, one is plug and charge, and one is vehicle to grid. So if you're new on this journey, then I would 100% recommend that you look at future proofing and look at this thing called ISO 15118, plug and charge, and bidirectional vehicle to grid charging. So I guess that's the bigger topic, that the framework is, you know, kind of future proofing your estate. And then what comes with that is good energy management. And this is where we sort of see that fleet managers are now energy managers are fleet managers, and that sort of thing. So load balancing, for example, can be quite straightforward, particularly in a depot environment. You've got to make sure that's the first thing that you do, is, do you have enough power on site? So that's the number one. Is, once you've understood your profile of your fleet and kind of how it's working and the payloads and all the rest of it, is, do you have enough power? And if you don't, you've got a couple of options. You can spend a lot of money with the DNOs to upgrade the grids, and that might be a reasonable outcome and a necessary one. But quite often you can load balance, which is basically sharing the power between, let's say you've got 10 chargers and you've got 10 vans being charged at one point, but they've got different state of charges. The battery capacities at different levels. You've got some at 50%, some at 20%. Basically, through our technology and others, you can shift the amount of available power to prioritize the vans that are on kind of lower state of charges. And we're getting really good at that. So we also now use artificial intelligence to predict weather patterns, to be able to say when's the best time to optimize solar, if you've got solar in your estate, those sorts of things. And essentially, when you get to things like vehicle to grid and dynamic time of use tariffs and demand side response and all of these crazy energy terms, you've got an opportunity to turn your assets from a cost center into a profit center, and you can start to trade energy. So if you've got a whole load of vans that are parked up, perhaps they've just come back at 4 o'clock, and they're charging or available to charge between, say, 4 and 8, which are typically the sort of peak hours, then just even being available to the national grid and to the DNOs can become a revenue stream that fleet managers and energy managers perhaps are not beginning to understand yet. You know, the first step is I need to electrify my fleet and I need to make it work and it needs to be reliable, and how much does it cost? And I think the next question that fleet managers should start asking is, well, how do I optimize these batteries to offset some of the costs, but also to provide an ongoing revenue stream. So the opportunity to help fleets commercialize their assets is really there if you future-proof your estate, but also to, you know, because this is about decarbonisation, but also to help fleet managers and energy managers choose when it's cheapest and greenest to charge your fleet. So, you know, with clever technology that we've got and AI and all those sorts of things, we can help energy and fleet managers essentially say, look, you know, what are our priorities? You know, first of all, we need the vans to work when we need them to work. We need to have enough range and all that sort of thing. But the second thing is we can help those fleets, those energy managers choose when it's cheapest and cleanest to charge on the grid. Do they optimize the solar on the roof? Do they sell back to the grid at this time? Do they charge at this time and then discharge at another time, and so on? So we can do all sorts of clever things that can yes, make some money for companies, but also reduce CO2.
Yeah, great, and it's great to hear you talking about AI, Darren. I think we're still very much at the beginning of that AI journey, but it's gonna have a transformational effect for a lot of fleets who have got the right hardware and software in place for the management of their fleets.
I agree. Be very interesting few years.
Yeah, absolutely. Darren, as always, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
And thank you, of course, to Keba for joining GreenFleet Talks. That is about all we've got time for. Thank you for watching, and tune into GF Television again soon.